My next guest is the very first full-time barbecue editor for a magazine in the country. You also see him on this show from time to time, giving his thoughts on the world of barbecue and more. Tonight, we're chatting a bit about a new book coming out May 7th, entitled Whole Hog BBQ, The Gospel of Carolina Barbecue, with recipes from Skylight Inn and Sam Jones Barbecue. Let's head to the Fogo Charcoal Hotline and welcome back the barbecue editor for Texas Monthly Magazine, friend of this show, Daniel Vaughn. Daniel, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you, Greg?
Absolutely fabulous, Daniel. Appreciate you making time for the show here. A couple different ways that we are going to head this evening here. First and foremost, what do you know about the Certified Angus Beef Barbecue Summit? Isn't that something that you went to? Let me step back here because it
are you talking about the Certified Angus Beef Barbecue Summit that's in my hometown of Worcester, Ohio?
Yes! Worcester! Let me back out just for a second because it seems like I'm maybe coming out of nowhere, but I got an email from a listener at the top of the show saying, hey, I'm following, a handful of luminaries in the barbecue world, and they're all down in Worcester at the Certified Angus Beef. Did you decline an invite, or, is Worcester too far from Cleveland? And I said, well, geez, it's hard to decline something that you don't get. And no, Worcester is exactly 1 hour from my house. So is this something that you had
Greg,
went to?
It seems that you and I are not luminaries this year.
What? How can this be? Daniel, I don't know. I don't want to talk for you, but I seem to be working harder than ever. There's got to be a reward at the end here, right?
Yeah, you'd think so. I'm getting a bit of FOMO just going through the Instagram feed, looking at all my buddies who are hanging out in Ohio, eating all kinds of good beef, making sausages. Maybe next year, Greg.
What's the experience like? I mean, I've never been. It's been a couple years since you've been there, but what do they change it up? Is it kind of the same every time?
Yeah, well, actually, the year that I went, we tasted quite a few different cuts, all done in a smoker. So it was basically like, instead of just feeding brisket or beef ribs, they smoked like a whole chuck. They were smoking some extreme wet aged beef as well. I actually stopped in there one other time, just kind of on my own while I was back at home visiting family, and we tried a 6-month-old brisket, one that had been sitting in plastic in cryovac for 6 months.
Wow.
And they smoked it up to see what that extreme wet aging did to the brisket, and if it improved its tenderness or anything. It may have improved its tenderness a bit, but not enough to overcome, I guess, what it did to the flavor, which was not positive.
Oh, that's too bad. Daniel Vaughn joining me here on the show. All right, so let me ask you this as we kind of put a bow on the Certified Angus Beef thing. Because there's a number of people that have been on this show that are, within a 60-minute radius of my house, should I start a new show banning rule where if you come into Cleveland, even if you're headed out of the metro area and you don't message me at a minimum to say hi, that you are instantaneously banned from the show for life? And I understand that might seem a little severe, but let's lay this out. For example, a Daniel Vaughn comes to Cleveland once a year, twice a year. You got, as you had mentioned, family ties back in the Worcester area. But not only do you hit me up when you're in Cleveland proper, but typically you're hitting me up a week or two in advance at a minimum just to say, hey, I'm going to be jammed up when I'm in town, but I just wanted to let you know I was going to be in, say hi, blah, blah, blah. It's the courtesy of letting me know that you're on my turf. Is that an unreasonable expectation?
I certainly don't think so.
Of course.
And yeah, we shared a great meal at Larder there in Cleveland.
Yes.
One of the best new restaurants in the country, I believe.
That's right. It's courtesy. That's all I'm asking. All right, Daniel, let's talk about.
And I would think, I might surmise here that Certified Angus Beef. I mean, maybe this is just all in payback for the fact that I co-authored a book on whole hog barbecue that's coming out this week. So
I see. Well,
it's all about the pig here.
We dovetail nicely as you are talking about this book called Whole Hog BBQ, The Gospel of Carolina Barbecue, with recipes from Skylight Inn and Sam Jones Barbecue. That's going to be released May 7th, so about a week or so away from getting the book actually dropped. I don't know if you knew this or not, Daniel, but it is currently ranked number 1 of new releases in the potato cooking section. On Amazon. I don't know
we were looking for the potato lovers out there. So
mission accomplished.
There's a potato salad recipe in there, and it's a doozy.
So let's talk about the book. I mean, I know in the beginning you were a blogger. You like to track down the exploits, obviously, with the job that you currently have, writing there as well. But putting a book together with Sam Jones, how does that come about? And I guess it comes as no surprise if you're co-writing with him, this is going to have to do with the traditional whole hog type barbecue.
Yeah, that's right. It really started with a visit to Skylight Inn. This is back before Sam Jones Barbecue existed. So Sam, he's the third generation in his family, the Jones family there in Ayden, North Carolina. Skylight Inn is a legendary place. It's been around since 1947, and they do Eastern North Carolina style whole hog barbecue. And I came in for a visit, and I went back to the pit room hoping to find Sam back there. And he was about hip deep in a trench that he was digging, trying to find a water leak in an irrigation system back in the back of the property. So he kind of does it all there. He's also the fire chief in Ayden. So
right.
He's in charge of putting out the fires and building them. So
do you approach him about putting a book together? Like, how does the actual system come in place?
Yeah, well, it was actually my book agent. So David Hale Smith, he's been my agent on a couple of projects, and Sam tells such great stories. And I was really just sitting around at Big Apple Barbecue one year up in New York. It's like, we really got to write a book with this guy. He tells such great stories, and that's really how it came about. And it was years, literally years of just hanging out with Sam at different events, going to North Carolina, doing interviews with him and his family, collecting all those interviews, transcribing them all, and then putting them down together in a way that we could tell a good story and tell people how to cook a whole hog. So, I mean, the book's really broken up in between telling that long family history of the barbecue traditions and what is Eastern North Carolina style barbecue, how did Sam come to then open his own place, Sam Jones Barbecue, just 10 minutes away from the original. But the bulk of the centerpiece of the book is about 25 pages on everything from building everything you need to know to cook a whole hog in your backyard. So that is building a burn barrel, getting a pallet of concrete blocks and building that concrete block pit, how to source a hog, how to season it, how to start the fire. I mean, all the way down to how to chop the meat and season it.
Wow. So it's not only is it a history lesson or a tale of a family steeped in barbecue tradition, but it's also a 25-page cookbook in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, if all goes well, I mean, there's going to be Home Depots and Lowe's around the country that are going to be running out of concrete blocks.
Yeah, right.
After this book goes on sale, that's the hope anyway. I hope they're ready for it. But really, I think what Aaron Franklin did with his barbecue book and getting people comfortable with the fact that if they really just studied that book and understood all those steps, that they could pull off like a really good smoked brisket. And I think just looking through the book and seeing all these steps and putting it all in layman's terms that I think anybody can understand, that it'll give people the confidence to know that, you know what, if I actually go through with this, like, this book is going to be here to guide me.
Daniel Vaughn joining me here on the show, tmbbq.com, his website. We're talking about the book that's going to be coming out May 7th, Whole Hog Barbecue, The Gospel of Carolina Barbecue, the recipes from Skylight Inn and Sam Jones Barbecue. Daniel, I don't know Sam. I think I've efforted him a couple different times at random to come on the show and kind of talk about it. But, as you had mentioned, he's third generation. If I remember correctly from an interview that I had seen, there was some type of discord between him and his father as far as how they wanted to continue to run the restaurant, and that's how he ends up branching out. He wanted to do something a little bit different or something outside of the norm of what had been happening for two generations before that. Is it still a cohesive unit, or was there some type of a division that really caused him to have to go out on his own?
Yeah, it's definitely still a both are family-run operations. I mean, when Sam goes off and he's cooking whole hog at an event somewhere, he's representing Sam Jones Barbecue and Skylight Inn. Mm-hmm. Sam goes into Skylight. I mean, he was there on site when they had a fire just a couple of months ago. He was there with the fire department on site to help put out that fire. So yeah, he's still very much involved. There was some there was a bit of a rift when he first opened Sam Jones Barbecue, but I think it had less to do with the fact that he was opening a second restaurant there than it did the fact that he was opening his restaurant on Sunday and that he was serving beer. His dad's a Baptist preacher, and it took his dad several months to even walk in the door of the place after it opened. One of the great stories in the book, though, is that, so this is a rural North Carolina, really. And so Sam Jones Barbecue, the restaurant, is open up an hour later than Skylight Inn. Now, Skylight Inn, if they just pull a hog off the pit and they're chopping it and they don't cook it all and they're closing up, well, they have an agreement with the health department that they have an hour to serve that hog. And that means that they can truck it up to Sam Jones Barbecue and serve that pig. And so the first time that his dad came in was after Skylight Inn closed. His dad comes in, sits down, and Sam says he walks over, and he just knew something was going to be wrong. And his dad says, yeah, son, great job. This good barbecue. I mean, there's something a little different about it. I can't quite pick out. I don't know if it's the pits or the wood or, just who's cooking it back there. It's good, though. And he's like, oh, really? Something a little different about it, huh? Just not quite right. And he says he couldn't have been happier to let his dad know that he was eating his own hog straight from Skylight Inn, that there wasn't anything different about that hog. There wasn't anything different about who cooked it or the seasoning or anything else. So yeah, he said he knew that he was going to have some doubters about whether he could pull off the same good style whole hog that they get at Skylight Inn over at Sam Jones Barbecue. He just didn't think it was his dad was one he was going to have to convince.
Daniel, from a time perspective, how long does this book take to go from start to being released here in about a week?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think we started working on a proposal for this book to send to publishers in 2017. In early 2017. So that gives you some idea. And before that, there was a year and a half or so just collecting interviews and stories. And but then, once it gets going, schedule everything. We got Denny Colbert, who's a great photographer, got him out on site, and he was right there with us doing all these bunch of this recipe testing. So he was there to capture all that. And Angie Mosier, another good friend who was there to style the whole thing. So like everything, all the photos that you see in the book are really from a series of a couple of parties that we had, so that we had a good excuse to cook all this stuff up and serve it on a big old table.
Daniel Vaughn joining me here on the show again. The book is called Whole Hog BBQ, the Gospel of Carolina Barbecue, with recipes from Skylight Inn and Sam Jones Barbecue, going to be released May 7th. So head on over to Amazon.com and pre-order and keep it at that #1 status in the potato category at the bare minimum. The other thing I want to talk to you about tonight is the release, this was like last week or the week before, of what you call the midterm check-in. So everybody knows the Texas Monthly top 50 barbecue joints in the state. And here you have a top 25 new barbecue joints that was just recently released. Who is, if you look at the list of 1 through 25, is 1 the best and 25 is the 25th best, or is this just a listing of 25 of the best new ones out there in no particular order?
It's really just a listing of the 25 best new ones. I think a lot of folks in the magazine, online, it's a little hard to see as well. They're really listed alphabetically by city that they're in.
Okay.
So Evan Leroy over at Leroy and Lewis in Austin is getting a lot of congratulations for being #1 on the list, but that's just because Austin starts with an A. But Leroy and Lewis does some fantastic barbecue. I was actually just there a couple of days ago and got some of their beef cheeks. He does smoked beef cheeks throughout the week instead of cooking brisket. Brisket's really only a weekend thing. And it's got whole hog daily, which is a strange thing to see in Texas, but more and more places are doing it, and they do it well at Leroy and Lewis.
Is that something that the crowd is demanding? I mean, I think you obviously think of Texas and it's, beef and perhaps some ribs and sausage for sure. Obviously the beef ribs, but not necessarily, pork per se. But is that something that the crowd is demanding, or are the pitmasters and the restaurant owners trying to force it down the tube, if you will?
I really think it's a way for some of the pit masters to separate themselves out. Like pulled pork here has been a thing for a while, but it's never, I think, crept up into really beloved status at most places. A smoked pork shoulder is great and all, but it's in Texas anyway. It's never really going to compete with a sliced brisket. But there's a certain amount of, I guess, panache that comes with being able to say you're cooking a whole hog. It's going to have a different texture. You're certainly going to have more fat coming in there as well. Some of the places doing whole hog, like Bangers in Austin, they're chopping the crispy skin into the meat as well. So you get that sort of textural variation that you're never going to get with just cooking a skin off, bone in pork butt.
Would you say it's just as good as a carrot, not anything in particular, but just a Carolina style hog?
I think it's going to take some more practice for that. I mean, I love the flavors that a lot of these folks are getting. But I mean, and not just because I wrote a book with Sam, but every time I go back to Ayden, go back to Winterville and sit down at either Sam Jones BBQ or Skylight Inn, like just sitting down and getting one of those sandwiches, taking a bite, just reminded like how special it is, why it's worth traveling for to eat that meat, because it is so good. It is so much better than you're going to get pretty much anywhere else.
Daniel, let me ask you an odd question. Lockhart was that proclamated as the barbecue capital of Texas?
Yes. As far as the state legislature is concerned, they have officially designated it the barbecue capital of Texas. Yes.
Would you be against some type of, like if I drafted a House bill or something along these lines and said, okay, well, Lockhart's been great, but let's really go ahead and give it to Austin. I mean, if you look at where Austin is as it continues to grow out and the level of barbecue that is there, I mean, shouldn't that really be the barbecue capital of Texas, Austin?
Well, then you're going to have a lot of folks from Houston who have got a good argument. Now, Houston, they have a whole lot of more area to deal with. They certainly are happy to be inclusive of all the surrounding towns that have good barbecue joints around Houston. But yeah, you're right. I mean, but first, really, before Texas is going to spend any energy designating any other city as a barbecue capital or co-capital or whatever, the fact that brisket itself or barbecue itself isn't recognized as a state food or state dish or anything like that, really, we've got chili.
Really?
And I can tell you that chili is the state food of Texas. It is the state dish. And I can tell you there's a whole lot more people that identify Texas with tacos and a whole lot more people that identify it with barbecue than they do with chili. So that's something that we need to work on, I think, before we start worrying about who's the barbecue capital.
Are you a chili fan, or are you on the schneid with chili?
No, I love chili. It's just fine, but I don't know. I just don't I don't see a whole lot of requests for people who are headed to Texas and they got to know where to get that great bowl of chili.
Are you going to be making any appearances coming up? Are you doing a book tour or anything?
There is a book tour. I'm not going to be at all those locations, but we have, so on the release date, so next Tuesday, we've got a big shindig planned at Sam Jones BBQ in Winterville. So I'm flying in for that. Looking forward to getting back over there and just seeing all the folks that we worked with to get the book together. But I'll be staying at Samuel Jones. I won't be staying at Sam's house because it was actually his business partner, Michael Letchworth, who reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, by the way, we're planning this event on the 7th. You want to stay at my place?" So I thought that was pretty funny. My co-author here wasn't the first to extend the invitation. But hopefully he's listening in here, or he at least gets pointed to this in some way. And then in June 8th, we'll be down in Austin at the Yeti headquarters and cooking a whole hog there as well. So there's quite a few more that he's got planned. He's really always on the road at different events. And I know he'll be at the Windy City Smokeout in Chicago.
Nice.
They've got a big barbecue event planned out in Hawaii. Next 2 weeks from now, there's a big barbecue event in Los Angeles with Adam Perry Lang.
Nice.
Some other folks too. So yeah, he'll be getting around the whole country. That's for sure.
All right. I'm going to ask you a completely left field question, but you mentioned Adam Perry Lang. Whatever happened with that whole story with Jimmy Kimmel and the
you mean
bombs
the house
and guns and all that
showing up?
Yes.
Yeah, the police department came out and said all charges dropped. It was a swatting incident. It was somebody had called in an incident, a shooting at the home,
Right.
and had acted as if they were calling from inside the home. Adam Perry Lang was the only one in the house. He had his phone turned off and was like just dead asleep. And they were banging on the door. He came out all groggy, like, what's going on? And they arrested him because they had been told that somebody had shot someone inside the house.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a complete fabrication. And it's all behind him now. He's actually opened up he's got the steakhouse APL in Los Angeles, and he's also opened up a barbecue joint as well. Like, he's serving barbecue out of the side of the place, and he's doing everything. He's doing brisket and pork shoulder, and I think some smoked New York strips as well. So yeah, I'm anxious to get out there and try it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him back on the show so we can kind of rehash all that stuff and catch up since the last time. In the meantime, we're talking with Daniel Vaughn. He is the barbecue editor for Texas Monthly, tmbbq.com, his website. And don't forget about the new book that'll be releasing May 7th, Whole Hog Barbecue, The Gospel of Carolina Barbecue, with recipes from Skylight Inn and Sam Jones Barbecue. Daniel, always appreciate the time and the conversation, my man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's great talking with you. Maybe next time we can do it over some certified Angus beef down in Worcester.
All right. I won't hold my breath as you won't, but we'll see what happens. You never know. There he is, Daniel Vaughn. This guy, man, he is a pot stirrer of the 1st Brigade.